So for the demo, I want to do two things. Number one, I want to show to you how you can move from the Java classes without inheritance into inheritance using super and extends. And also I want to show you a bit on the debugger, how you can trace the objects. It's actually quite important for you to see how you can visualize the objects. So mostly in the lecture time, we're going to do on the paper, but I think on the Eclipse, that's also something I want to show to you, how you can see that. And this will be beneficial for your lab number 4 and programming test number 3. Okay. All right, so how can you find a file? Let me show you also very briefly. So if you go to the lecture site, so let me launch the browser very quickly. Should have done that before the recording, but anyway. So if you go to the lecture site, there's a project you can download, and also you can import it into your Eclipse, which I've done already, but I'll show you very briefly so you can see where to find it. Okay. All right. Okay, there we go. So if you go to the lecture site, and then, yeah, sorry for the delay, just loading a bit slowly. There we go. Come on. All right, that's good. If you go to the lecture site, you will see under the inheritance section, and then you will see that there is the code over here under the code section, which will be here. Okay, you can see SMS over here, Student Management System. So that one there contains two packages there. One would be all the classes without the inheritance, and the other package will be with the inheritance. So I'm going to show to you how you can build the code with inheritance from scratch. That'll be important. Okay, so that's the plan for today. I'll come back here a little bit later to make highlights. All right, so now if I open the without inheritance package, let me show you the classes that we are going to improve. Okay, so number one, we got a class called course, which got very simple attributes, title and fee. And notice one thing here, I didn't put anything, any so-called modifier besides the attribute like a private or public. And also for the constructor, I didn't do anything either. So there will be something I will discuss tomorrow in the lecture. So there are three basic modifiers you can put besides Java methods or attributes, namely private, protected, and also public. So these are the three things I'm going to mention to you and clarify them tomorrow. For now, let's just put no modifier just to avoid confusion. Okay, just for today. All right, so we got a course class here. That's good. And also we got the resident students. Okay, let me show you resident student first. So that'll be the first class here. You can see we got name, courses, and number of courses. We got premium rates that's unique to resident students. And also we got the constructor over here. And also we have a method for setting the premium rates. And also we got register. And for register, just make some assumption. It should be, if that's larger than or equal to 5, we're going to signal some error. And for the get tuition, you can see that for the first part, we basically try to calculate the base amount by accumulating the fee in the registered courses. And we try to apply the premium rates at the end. If you move on to the non-registered student class, you got lots of duplicates, right? Let's now just review again. And then we'll see how we can use inheritance to improve it a lot. So we got non-resident student class here. And duplicate number 1, we got name, registered courses, and NOC all declared. Again, this discount rate is actually fine. This will be something that's called cohesive design because we only declaring discount rate in the non-resident student class, which is okay. But in the constructor here, we are repeating the 2 lines for setting up the non-resident students. And this method is fine, just setting the discount rate. But the register method here is a complete duplicate from what we have just seen in the resident student class. And for the get tuition, it's almost identical. You can see this part here for calculating the base amount is the same as in the resident student class. Only this part here has to be different, which will be to apply the base into discount rate as opposed to premium rate. So that's kind of the layout for the design without any inheritance. So I would say for short term, these classes without inheritance will work. That's not a big issue. But in the long term, if you're talking more about ongoing progression of your project, you better refactor your design into with inheritance. All right, that's kind of the advice. But we'll see very soon. And for you guys to really play with the code, you can also see there's another class called Student Management System We are not going to talk about it today, but we're going to talk about it maybe in the class tomorrow. And also, there are 2 tester and JUnit test classes. You can also take a look, right? I'll leave that to you. Let's now dive directly into inheritance. At the moment, I only got 2 classes there for us to start with. The course class, the same. We don't need to do anything about it. Not part of the inheritance design. And we got 1 JUnit test case, which is going to show us how we can create some student, register some courses, and calculate. This is something I would like to show to you at the end using debugger. We'll get there. All right. So just before we start, what's going to happen is this. Because we have seen lots of duplicates. For example, you can see with duplicate, the declaration of these attributes between these classes. And also we got these lines also duplicated over here. And also we got the entire method duplicated. And also we got the first phase for the get tuition duplicated. So what's going to happen is we're going to factor out these duplicates into a single class called students. And that student there is going to be the superclass for the other 2 subclasses. So think about all the orange part. I just have highlights over here. They are going to be factored out into a class called students. And the parts that's not exactly common, but it's kind of unique to each individual subclasses. For example, premium rates, and also the also set discount rate, set premium rate, set discount rate as well. It's not really shown here, but it's there in the code. For example, this one here somehow is going to belong to a subclass called resident students. And this one here somehow is going to belong to a non-resident student class. And we're going to build the inheritance relationship by saying RS extends students and NRS extends students. So that's kind of the layout. All right, let's take a look how we can do that. All right. Let's now, first of all, create that superclass called students. So I'm going to create a class inside the students. So new class students. All right. All right, initially the student class is empty. Let me close every other tabs so we can avoid any confusion. All right, the student class over here. So what should we put? The idea would be we want to say this. This class stores everything, every attributes or method that is comments between resident students and non-resident students. As easy as that. All right, let's take a look. So if I can go back to the original resident students class, let's see what we should really copy over. So just once. So I go to resident students class. Number 1, I want to copy over the attributes. All right. As soon as you copy that, you will see an Eclipse will try to automatically put this one here for you for the course. I would say we're going to use the same course over here in the same package, so we don't really need that. But at the end, I'm going to get rid of this line. All right, just some technical issue here. So these are the attributes that are going to be shared by resident students and non-resident students later. And what else? And for the constructor of this one, we don't really copy over. Premium rate doesn't really belong to the superclass because it's not shared. Right? It's kind of unique to only resident student class. So for this one here, I'm going to copy the body of the constructor, or I can copy the whole thing. That's okay. I'll just change the name later. So copy this and go back to students, paste it, and I'll just change this one to be students. That's a constructor. Okay. And getting there. So for the set premium rate, I don't copy that because it's only unique to the resident students. And for register, I can copy that entirely. It's going to be shared. Okay, register over here. And then I'm going to also copy get tuition. Only part of it, only up to here. Only up to the point where I calculate the base amount. For the rest of it, about premium rate versus discount rate, I'll do that at the subclass level later. All right, go back here and paste it and close the method here. And of course, at the end, I'm going to say return the base. So as far as the student class is concerned, we only calculate the base amount for the get tuition. We're going to override it later in the subclass. Right? Everything compiles so far. And if I just make sure everything's good, yeah, that's good. And now what should we do? We have done with factoring out all the common parts, the orange part, into the student class. Now we need to declare resident students and non-resident students. As soon as you declare the class, you want to make sure you specify the inheritance relationship right away using the extends keyword, right? That's important. Let's now do that. All right, I'll go back here. And then I'm going to create a new class over here in the package with inheritance. Now here you have two choices. As soon as I type resident students, right? So it's a little bit font size a bit small, but when you watch the video later, you might be able to see. So there is one field over here called superclass. So Java allows you to really put your superclass here right away. So one choice for you would be you just type students over here, and then it's going to fill in the extends keyword for you automatically. But I will not recommend this one so much because you're still learning about how to program inheritance. It wouldn't hurt to type it out yourself. But I'll leave the choice to you. If you prefer this way to save some typing, feel free to do it. You can do this in the lab and also in the programming test. That's not a problem. By default, it simply put the object class because by default, every class is a subclass of objects. That's something we said earlier. All right, I'll say finish for now. And then now I want to make sure between the resident students and the opening curly brackets, I will say extends. Okay, make sure you spell it correctly. And then I'm going to put students here. As soon as I've done this, so that means every time everything that's available in the student class, it will be available to resident student class as well. We call it inheritance. Okay, I'll put it here. All attributes and methods that are declared in students, which is a superclass, are inherited to students. Inherited to resident students. And there is some principle you will have to know by the end of the inheritance lecture. There are several things you can do in the subclass. Okay, I'll list them out. Number one, if the inherited, okay, number one, you cannot redeclare the inherited attributes. For example, you cannot redeclare the name, you cannot redeclare the courses again. They are simply there. It's implicit. Okay. Number two, if you are not satisfied, how about this? You are satisfied first. If you are satisfied with the inherited method, for example, in this case, register, you can choose to leave it implicit, meaning that you just keep the parent version. You don't need to do anything about it in this class. You can just use it. Number three, if you are not satisfied with the inherited method, for example, get tuition, we want to change, we somehow want to extend its definition with premium rate versus discount rate. Okay, for example, get tuition, you can choose to override it. And this is something you would like to connect back to the object equals method. So because every class inherits the equals method from the object class. If you're not happy about it, you can override it if you wish. All right. All right, the final thing you can do, number four. You can also add new attributes or new methods. All right, so these are the list of things you can do typically in the subclass, right? But once you go through lab number 4, you can just practice them. Okay. All right, let's now try to see each one of them. All right, so for the resident students class, what can we do? We do not have to, so here, number 1, we do not have to declare names, courses, and NOC. So these are the attributes that were already in the student class over here. right? We don't need to redeclare them. They are simply just there, okay? Number one. But you always need a constructor. So let's put a constructor here. So now in the, sorry, I just closed the wrong thing. Just let me go back there. So let me double click. Resident student, there we go. All right. We do not need to redeclare, but we need a constructor. So you would say resident students, and then string name. It's going to be very similar. It's going to be the same header as the superclass, which is students over here. Right? You can see that one takes a string name. And now we don't need to repeat these two lines anymore. Instead, we can call this version of the constructor in the superclass. And the way to do it would be, you say super name. So this one here basically invoke the constructor in the superclass students. All right, that's the first usage of the super keyword, right? That's how you type. So whenever you got a super keyword followed by opening parenthesis, that means you're calling the constructor in the superclass. Okay. All right, what else? And let's say we want to have some new attributes. Let's say define new attributes and method unique to resident students. In this case, it will be the premium rates and set premium rates. So you can say double premium rate. And also you have a mutator set premium rates. And double. Yeah, very standard. But you just want to follow this flow about what you can do in the subclass. You can just apply that in your lab number 4. This premium rates is assigned to the parameter premium rates. All right, so these are new things. And what about the register method? For the register method, we don't need to touch it because we want to use it as is without any distinction between resident students and non-resident students. So what I can say here, we also do not have to override the register method, let's say. Well, so the last thing to do would be we want to override the get tuition method because the way we calculate the get tuition for resident students would be different from non-resident students. Let's now do that. But to override the method, just redeclare that. So to be safe, you can go back to the student class, okay, and then you can just copy the header over here, get tuition. Okay, I got some compilation error. Let me just fix that right away. Not visible. Okay, let me go back to the course over here. That's the fee. Okay, let me just, okay, make sure you delete this line if you're doing this with the video, right? You want to make sure you're using just the course in the same package, okay? All right, let me go back there. And let's now copy down the header for the get tuition. So now we want to overwrite or redefine. Okay, let me make it bigger. Override or redefine the get tuition method that's inherited from students. All right, let's now see what we can do. Here's the thing. If you go back to the student class, what we want to do is we want to reuse everything that's in the get tuition to return the base amount. And on top of that, we want to apply the premium rates. So thinking this way. So think about if you go back to the inheritance architecture over here, right? So this is what you can think. We got the students over here. So we got resident students, and also we got non-resident students. Okay, thinking this way. So we have the get tuition method that's first defined in the student class. And then we got, let's say, the resident student we're handling. Don't forget we got some unique attribute that's new, which is premium rates. And then for the get tuition method, we want to, first of all, redeclare that in the resident student class for the second time. So this will be override. So I'll put a star over here, just standing for overriding. Okay, and then inside the definition for the get tuition here, we're going to need two things. So number one, we are going to need the definition of the get tuition from the superclass. And for that one, we're going to use a super keyword. And number two, we are actually going to use the unique attributes that belongs to the resident student, in this case, premium race. So these are the two things we will need in order to define the get tuition method for resident students. And similarly, for the non-resident students class, you also need to override the get tuition. But now this time, you will need the get tuition from the parent class, and also you're going to need another attribute called discount rate. That's what you will see when we get to the class. Okay? So it's a very common pattern here. Just remember, when you are in a subclass over here, if you want to override the method that's inherited from the parent class, very often you will have to use the super keyword to really invoke the version that's in the superclass first, and then get a result and do something about it and combine with some new information. That's the general structure, right? You just need more experience doing it. But let's do that for the first time now. All right, so now I'm back to the resident students class. So what I will do is I'm going to say double the base amount will be super dot get tuition. And then, so this will be part one. So this will be compute the base amount using the version of get tuition from students, the superclass students. And once you have done that, we can say return base multiplied by this dot premium race. You can see this part here, we are reusing the block of code that's defined in the student class, which is over here, the base amount. On top of that, we are trying to add something more that's actually specific to the resident student class, which is premium rate. Right? So that's something you want to get clear yourself. Okay? And I will do the non-resident student class as well, and then I will show you guys some possible error that's interesting. That was raised by your classmate in the morning. I want to mention to you as well. Okay. Let me, first of all, finish the non-resident student class as well. So I can just copy this class over here, copy, Control-C, and then paste it. Okay. I'm just going to rename it non-resident students. Non-resident students. All right. And if I click on that, so for the non-resident student, basically everything I said earlier for resident student, basically everything apply, except for certain minor details. Let me just fix that. Okay. So the principle about what you can do in a subclass stay the same. Okay. Also, in this case, we don't really redeclare all the attributes, and we don't override the register. That's also the same. But now we have to make sure the name of the class is the name of the constructor is changed. And when you copy and paste in Eclipse, it changed for you, which is good. And here we're also invoking the constructor in the superclass. That one also the same. But now, rather than premium rates, in non-resident student, we should say discount rate. Let's do some renaming. Okay. And if you want to do renaming, I would suggest you do that systematically. You can just move your mouse over, click your mouse over, single click on the name you want to rename. And right click, and then you will see something called refactor. And then say rename. And this way, if you, once you have done this renaming, it's going to And just for this method here, it should be set discount rate, which I need to rename quickly. That one is easy. I can just go, because there's no way else that I'm referring to it. Okay, set discount rate. So now we are done with the classes, but we got to make sure everything is done correctly. So what I will do is I'll go back to the JUnit test over here. So at the moment, it is still referring to student management system. For now, we can just comment it out. I'm going to talk about student management system later in the lecture. Okay. So I'm just going to select it, comment it out. All right, everything compiles. And if I try to run it, let's see if everything's good. Okay, let's just wait. All right, everything's good. Okay. So I would suggest really, if you really follow the idea, after the video, try to do this yourself, to redo from scratch. It's a good practice to see how you can use a super keyword and how you can use the extends keyword. And before I move on to breakpoint debugger, that'll be the second part for this demo, I want to ask you guys one interesting question, all right, which was raised by your classmate earlier this morning. Okay, let me close all of them. And I will go back to the resident student class. All right. So you guys can see that this is how I use the super keyword, right? To say I want to call the parent version of the get tuition. What if I change this from super into this? I'll pause one moment for you guys to think about. Let's say this is a test, like an exam question. I said the only thing I changed was I changed from super in line number 39 from super into this. Is this code gonna work? If no, tell me exactly how that may go wrong. Think about it. Okay, and now I can take some of you to share your thoughts. All right. Yeah, at least you know what the question is, right? All right, let me hear some thoughts. Okay, what's your thought?
So I think it won't work because it's calling the method inside the
subclass,
rather
okay.
than the class.
So
It's
okay.
kind of like a recursive method.
Okay,
so
good.
it
Yeah,
doesn't have
let's not too worry about recursion yet because we haven't formally introduced it in the course. But why it is wrong is very easy to see. If you go back to the diagram, okay, if you think about when we, okay, inside the context over here, okay, inside the context, if you say option A, if I say super.getTuition, this one here is referring to the get tuition in the parent class, because super. But now for option B, which I just showed to you, let me write it down. What's going to happen is, this is really referring to the current class where I'm defining the method. So it's really talking about the very same method where this line is written. You guys remember cost? We first call this get tuition over here, right? We're going to put it on the stack, get tuition. And then if we choose option B, and at the first part, if you say this.get tuition, and we know that it's actually going to call this one instead. And that one there, by definition, is also going for option B again. And that one there is going to put get tuition again. So this will be like an infinite number of times you're going to put get tuition on the stack without ever going to a different method there, which might just give you some loop and terminate the method call, right? So let's verify this. So this is something you want to really try to convince yourself. If you have this one here calling the same method, you might just keep doing this without any end. Okay, so let's double check. If I simply just run the same test case again, I'm going to get some failure. All right, let's see exactly what a failure is. Okay, you may not read it properly. I'll read it to you. It's something called stack overflow error. It simply means you're getting so many get tuition calls. Note. get stuck in the test. But if you got infinite recursion, Stack Overflow is usually your enemy. And think about it. All right, so final thing I would like to do very quickly, I want to show to you. This is something I will also recap again, maybe tomorrow in the lecture. How do we visualize the child objects? So right now we got student class, the superclass, we got resident students, and also we got non-resident students. So this is very important. If you look at the student class, the superclass, you got name, courses, and number of courses. These are the three attributes. Now, in the resident student class, again, if you go back to the definition, the only attributes that we explicitly declare is premium rates. However, the way you visualize this object here should not be this simple. Meaning that premium rate, of course, should be part of the non-resident students. Sorry, resident students, it should be part of it. But all the attributes that are inherited from the student class, you should put them here as well. That's how you visualize them, right? That's important. Similarly, for the non-resident students class over here, you can see they share the same set of attributes that's inherited from students, but they also got something that's new, that's unique, discount rate. This observation here is going to lead us to talking about many interesting things that we need to learn from tomorrow, all right? Let's now see the debugger, all right? Let's now go back to the JUnit test. And of course, I got to change my implementation back, right? There should be super, all right? And then I'm going to go back here and let's just rerun the test to make sure everything works. That's good. And then I'm going to go to the test students over here. And I'll go to the first line. I'm just going to show to you how you can step over and step into and see which version of the method is being called. All right, that's important. All right, let's now launch the debugger. And then let's now see. Switch the context. All right, let's switch over here. So now we are pausing at line number 11. All right, here. So if I say step into, I basically want to see how this constructor is being invoked. Because that one there, we know that in turn is going to invoke the super, which is in the parent class students, right? So this one here is a bit peculiar, so I want to show you how you can get around with it. If you first say step over, you might run into an error like this, okay? But that's okay. What you gotta do is you gotta say step return. That one is gonna return back to this line here and then say step over again. That's how you get rid of it, okay? Get around with it. You gotta say step over. If you run into that error I showed you, say step return and then step over again. Oh, okay, if I say step over now, it's going to show to me how I execute this constructor here in the subclass. So step into. Right, you can see now we're in the resident student constructor. That one is calling super. Now this is important. What if I say step into super name? Which class should I switch into? Students, the parent class, right? So now if I say step into over here, I now really switch to the student class constructor and execute these two lines. It will be the same case if I step into the creation of non-resident student class. I can also get to here as well. So that's how we reuse the code. All right. Okay, and then step over, execute it. That's fine. Step over. Good. So now we are in line number 12. So now we have created the resident student class. Let's now visualize the objects in the debugger. If you see under variables, you can see under gen, what attributes do we have? You can see we got name, we got a number of courses, and also we got, name, number of courses, and registered courses. These three that are highlighted, they are inherited from the students class, parents. And the premium rate is unique to this subclass. All right? That's something you can also see for non-resident student. That one I'll leave to you. And two more things. If I step over again, now register, right? If you recall, back in the resident students class, we did not redeclare register class method. We did not do that. So now if I say step into, which version should it invoke? Should be the parent version, right? It's not overridden. Pretty much like if the equals method was not overridden, it should be the object version. If it was overridden, it should be the current class, right? easy principle. Right? If I say step into over here, you can see I now step into the register method that's in the student class. Right? That makes total sense. And I'm not going to step over to waste your time. I want to do one more thing. Step return. So now we are back to here. And then we're going to execute one more line, set premium rates. So that one here is going to set a premium rates for the resident student to be 1.25. Okay, one more thing. If I step into here, I'm going to see how the get tuition is going to be executed. So Jin here, over here, dynamically is a resident student's objects. So when I say get tuition, first of all, it's going to step into the get tuition in the subclass, which in turn is going to call the get tuition from the superclass, right? Let's see, verify that. If I say step into, so I'm now in the get tuition inside the context of resident students. And if I step, for the first line here, if I step into again, it's going to go to super.getTuition, right? If I say step into again, it's now going to get tuition inside the student class. That's how we reuse the code, right? You can see there's no code duplicate here. Whenever you say super, you simply go to another way, another class to call the method. It's like a helper method idea, all right? Guys, any question? All right, I think it's only the beginning. I think inheritance is pretty new. So you want to get used to these keywords and also visualizing the object and tracing the code. I think that as you complete lab number 4, it's also going to help you a lot. Okay, we're going to continue this discussion tomorrow in the class. All right, that's it. Thank you.